Welcome back, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to discuss GroupBy. The GroupBy methods allow us to group rows of data together and call aggregate functions. Often, we want to explore how values are distributed or aggregated across groups. To do this, we use the GroupBy method call on a pandas data frame. If you're familiar with SQL or SQL, this is very similar to a GroupBy call. This process is also often referred to as a split, apply, combine. Let me show you step by step what a GroupBy actually does behind the scenes. Let's imagine that we have a data frame with two columns. Column 1, which is categorical, A, B, or C, and then column 2, which is some continuous value. What we do is we select a column of categorical values. So that's step number 1, the column should be categorical. Step number 2 is to then split this up based off this category. So we get all the A's, all the B's, all the C's, and so on. Then we choose some sort of function to apply. In this case, we'll go ahead and apply a sum, in which case we grab all the items in column 2 and we go ahead and sum them together per category. So we've essentially split and then we've applied an aggregate function, such as a summation. After that, we recombine everything together to get the final result, which is why it's sometimes referred to as a split, apply, combine. So this is what a GroupBy does. We choose a categorical column, split based off those categories, apply the function per category, and then recombine it to get the final result. So keep in mind, we can choose any sort of aggregation function. So the operation chosen within the GroupBy call has to be an aggregation method. So what does an aggregation method actually mean? Well, it means that we can take in multiple values and combine them to return a singular value. So for example, taking the sum of an array or a sum of many values returns back a single value. Same with a standard deviation or a mean, or just counting how many values there are. You can also take in as many values as you want, you count them up, and you return back one single count. Things such as finding the max or min are also aggregation functions, since they take in many values and return back a single result. Let's go ahead and learn how to use GroupBy with pandas. Here you have an empty Jupyter notebook. Keep in mind, we're actually going to be reading in a CSV file. So after you've imported pandas as PD, what you need to do is you have to make sure you locate the CSV file. So what I would suggest you do is inside the pandas crash course folder, go ahead and create a new notebook. I've created one here called Untitled. And inside of this folder, pandas crash course, there's a CSV file called universities.csv. In order to call it the exact same way I'm going to call it, what you need to do is make sure your notebook is located in the exact same location as this .csv file. We're going to cover reading in data in a lot more detail later on, but for right now, to keep things simple, underneath your pandas crash course folder, go ahead, create a new notebook, just label it Untitled, and make sure it's in the same directory as this universities.csv file. Once you've done that, you should be able to run the following command. df is equal to pd.read_csv, and then simply provide the name of that. And what I suggest you do is hit tab here, and it should autocomplete for you. So universities.csv, and then run that. If it does not tab autocomplete, it means your notebook is in the wrong directory. So please go back and watch carefully how I set this up. What I can do is call head method on this data frame to show 5 rows by default. Note here we have 4 columns: sector, university, year, completions, and geography. It looks like sector, university, geography, and even year are actually categories. So year, you can think of this as continuous, but it's actually just categories such as the year 2016, next category, year 2017, etc. So don't be confused that even if a value in a column is not a string, it can still be categorical or treated as a category. So what we're going to do is step 1, which is called the GroupBy method. So df GroupBy, and then we decide what column do I actually want to group by. So it might be interesting to see the total completions per year across all universities. So what this data set is actually showing us is the sector of university, that particular university, the year, and how many completions that particular university had. All these universities are actually located in Nevada. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and see how many completions are happening on average per year. So you can say GroupBy and then pass in the column. Now if you just run this, what happens is you get back this data frame GroupBy object. And what this means is this GroupBy object is waiting for some extra aggregation call. So what you end up doing is you can do something like sum, and this would return back the total number of completions across each year. Or maybe you're interested in the average number of completions, such as the mean. You could run that, and notice what happens is the year right here ends up being your index, and the columns that can actually be operated on, so for example completions, those end up being resulted here. Now you may be wondering, why don't I see sector or university or geography? Well, that's because it doesn't actually make sense to calculate the mean of these strings or the mean of this university. So keep that in mind, that not every column you're going to be able to apply this aggregate function to it. And again, typically what you do is you group by some sort of categorical column and then perform the aggregations, expecting that to occur on the continuous value columns. Now, keep in mind, this also just returns back a data frame, and we can confirm that by checking the type of this. And here we can see the data frame. So there are a lot of possible aggregate functions for you to use, such as count, sum, mean, median, etc. And I would encourage you to check out the notebook that we provide for you. In it, if you actually open it up, so if I go back here and open up my GroupBy notebook, you'll scroll down, and eventually you'll see right here all the other aggregate functions you can call. So I listed them out here for you so you can check them out. Coming back to our notebook, what I wanted to point out is if I call again maybe mean, or let's go ahead and do sum so we can see the total number of students going through year or the number of completions per year, it makes sense that it's getting bigger. So more students, populations grow, etc. It should probably be increasing by year. What I could do is if I wanted the actual index to be in the other way, essentially not ascending but descending, I could say here dot sort underscore index and then say ascending is equal to false. Run that and that will actually sort based off the index. Okay, so we can also group by multiple columns, and that essentially gives us this like multi-tiered index. So let's take a look at our data frame again. So here we have the sector, the university, the year. What I could do is maybe group by the year and then group by the sector. So what I could do is something like this, df group by, and then I'm going to pass in a list of what I want to group by. So I want my outer grouping to be year, and then my inner grouping to be by sector. And then let's go ahead and check the sum. So I can see the actual number of completions per year per sector. Keep in mind, this data frame actually only has one column, completions. It now has a multi-tiered index, or a multi-hierarchy index, where the outer index is year and the inner index is called sector. So keep that in mind. We won't really be dealing that much with multi-tier indices throughout this course, but if you perform a group by where you're calling multiple columns, that will be the result. Finally, I want to show you how you can easily combine group by with the describe method for a very quick but useful summary statistics across a category. So we can call df group by year and then just say describe, and recall describe returns back the actual summary statistics across a variety of things like count, mean, standard deviation, min, max, etc. So here we get this nice table, and again what happens here is now we actually have a multi-tier across our columns. So we have this overall completions and then different columns like count, mean, standard deviation. What I like to do, however, is call a transpose on this, run that, and this actually then makes the categories, or the year, the columns themselves, and then we can see this completions index. So I personally prefer this method of calling .transpose after calling describe. But the main thing I want to point out is .describe is very useful with GroupBy to quickly get some aggregate summary statistics across particular categories in your dataset. The main thing you should take away from this lecture is you call df.groupby on some categorical column and then call some sort of method to be done across the continuous values, such as max, min, or if you want to run a gamut of summary statistics, then just call .describe. And for convenience, you can always transpose this. Thanks, and I'll see you at the next lecture.